Both members of this project found themselves focusing on the significance of public opinion in shaping future policy. In the early 2000s, demonization of the LGBT community was extensive and misinformation was rampant, which the proponents of Proposition 8 used to their advantage when campaigning for it. When Prop 8 was challenged in the court of law, the proponents sought to keep the trial from public view, hoping to hide their lack of factual basis. Dustin Lance Black's choice to take the transcript and turn it into a play changed public opinion drastically and influenced the next decade as the fight for gay marriage continued.
In my research, I found that public opinion on Supreme Court cases may not directly contribute to the case's final holding, but they can definitely shape further policy law progress, set precedent, and reinforce or dismantle previously held public opinion on the case matter. Proponents of Proposition 8 knew this, and they fought to keep the public out of the case through the filing of emergency papers to block the trial being filmed and streamed live throughout courthouses across the country. The Supreme Court sided with the defendants 5-4 and chose to block any broadcast to the public trial, but leaks still made it through, and it was live streamed on quite a few platforms. In a previous case, the California Supreme Court had already concluded that the California Constitution further guarantees same-sex couples all of the constitutionally based incidents of marriage, including the right to have that marriage officially recognized as such by the state. Throughout my research, I began to believe that Proposition 8 defendants would likely regret their decision because after the trial finished, Dustin Lance Black released a blockbuster play in the trial that mocked, dismantled, and ridiculed their defense and its arguments. And even further, Black chose to cast big celebrities for the production, including George Clooney and Jane Lynch, and Chris Colfer, just name a few. So this increased the spread of the case by a lot, and it opened up the audience a lot, which it was also spreading a very strong argument in favor of gay marriage. And following the case and the release of the play, the general American public, for the most part, found themselves collectively supporting the prevention of any kind of marriage ban, and it speaks to the effect of Black's play and much of his other work and activism within the LGBT community on the transition to acceptance, and his effect must not go unacknowledged. This is a quote from Act 2 of Black's play. "You heard Mr. Olson this morning recount the background of the Loving decision by the Supreme Court in 1967. And up to that time, numerous states had laws in the books which prohibited interracial marriage. Why are we not at that same tipping point here with respect to same-sex marriage?" And I thought this quote spoke really nicely to just how important it was for this case to go down when it did and how historical it was, because when a judge on the Supreme Court is talking about a tipping point in same-sex marriage, it kind of means it's a big case. And through my research, I was realizing that what I had previously held to be true, which was that gay marriage was, actively supported in the 2000s. I found that not to be true, and this quote speaks to that, and just how historical this case was. To reiterate, my particular research technique led me to a sudden realization: gay marriage was not accepted and protected in the way I assumed it would have been around 2010. The primary documents I stumbled upon on Prop 8 scared me with their relatively recent release, and it hit me that the fight for gay couples in this country was won in 2015, but was not widely supported up until then. Further, I found that Black's commentary done through his play was more historical than I had previously assumed. The work he has completed within the gay community without a doubt progressed American acceptance of gay couples. His literary approach to a legal matter allowed for both an abstract take on a sensitive subject matter for some, probably most at the time, and for the mass spread of an otherwise difficult legal document full of jargon unfamiliar to the common American. My last quote that I've included is a quote from Act 1 of 8, and is a quote talking about self-validation and just how important this case and its outcome was to the real people involved. It says, "The word marriage has a meaning. If it wasn't so important, we wouldn't be here today. Unless you have to go through that constant validation of self, there's no way to really describe how it feels. I love Jeff more than myself, and being excluded in that way is so incredibly harmful to me. I can't speak as an expert. I can speak as a human being that's lived it."
Dustin Lance Black's 8, by displaying a piece of the case that was brought all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in order to overturn Proposition 8, increased public awareness of the fight for marriage equality and helped pave the way for the eventual legislation of gay marriage nationwide. Since 8 quite literally brings the testimony and closing arguments of the case to life, providing dynamic engagement, I decided it was the perfect case study to answer 2 of our class research questions. Firstly, how are court opinions themselves a type of literature that is in conversation with other works? And secondly, how and why does drama engage the court most directly? The court opinion and testimony, prevented from being live broadcasted, reaches out from the transcripted pages, and turning the key elements into a Broadway play was Black's way of reaching back, of letting the world of theater engage with this most intense case. My research led me into a rabbit hole of interviews with both the real couples of the case, as well as with Black himself and some of the actors. It was through these that I understood the importance of distilling the key elements of the case and portraying the significant individuals using celebrities known and loved. Plaintiffs have demonstrated by overwhelming evidence that Proposition 8 violates their due process and equal protection rights, and that they will continue to suffer these constitutional violations until state officials cease enforcement of Proposition 8. California has already issued 18,000 marriage licenses to same-sex couples and has not suffered any demonstrated harm as a result. Because Proposition 8 is unconstitutional under both the Due Process and Equal Protection Clauses, the court orders prohibiting the official defendants from applying or enforcing Proposition 8 and directing the official defendants that all persons under their control or supervision shall not apply or enforce Proposition 8. It is so ordered. Justice Walker, Opinion of the Court, Perry v. Schwarzenegger. Proposition 8 was advertised to the general public through a campaign of fear-mongering centered around protecting the children from learning about gay marriage, as well as the blatant falsehoods that the LGBT community wished to legalize bestiality, pedophilia, and incest. These methods of weaponizing public fears and misconceptions turned Prop 8 into a national talking point on the presidential scale, and the framing of Prop 8 as a way to save marriage left the LGBT community unable to defend themselves. The trial of Perry v. Schwarzenegger was the community's way of getting their power back, of revealing Prop 8 for the violation of rights that it really was, and forcing its backers to actually prove their unfounded claims before a court of law. The hope of the plaintiffs was that by displaying the case over a live broadcast, the general public would be able to comprehend the falsehoods of the defendants. So when the defendants blocked the broadcasting right before trial, these hopes were temporarily shattered. Olson. So how does the lack of participation or representation in government positions undermine the political power of gay men and lesbians? Segura. There are members of the United States Senate who, in public speeches, have compared same-sex marriages to marrying a box turtle. Senator Coburn has gone on record saying that the gay and lesbian agenda is the greatest threat to the freedom of the United States today. And a senator from South Carolina said that gays and lesbians shouldn't be allowed to teach in the public schools. It's difficult to imagine an elected official saying such a thing about, really, almost any other citizen group. Now, that's not the fringe, that's a United States senator, and as a consequence, it legitimizes some of these deeply hostile beliefs. 8. Act 1. Black, himself a board member of the group sponsoring the plaintiffs, understood the supreme importance of getting public eyes on this issue and understanding it for what it really was. People in love, wanting their relationships to be recognized as the marriages they already were in everything but name. The transcript was thousands of pages long, and the opinion was dense, but the strength of the plaintiff's testimony and the weak arguments of the defense deserved to be put on display in a way the public could consume. Black also understood the power behind celebrity. Studies have proved that individuals are more likely to support gay rights when someone they know is gay. It is also clear that American media has created a rise in parasocial relationships with celebrities, leading the public to put them on pedestals and instinctively trust their opinions. By gathering individuals like George Clooney and Morgan Freeman, Black was able to sway public opinion, making the public realize that if the actors they respect support this message, then so should they. Without Black's efforts to engage the case and bring it to the stage, the fight for marriage equality in other states would have been much harder. Boys. And then the last sentence says, if sexual orientation is characterized as a civil right, then so would pedophilia, polygamy, and incest. Do you agree with that, sir? Tam. Yes, I agree. Boys. And that's what you were telling people in order to convince them to vote for Proposition 8. Is that correct? Tam. Yes. Boys. Let me go down to point 4, where you say that countries that legalized same-sex marriage saw alarming moral decline. You believe that after the Netherlands legalized same-sex marriage, the Netherlands went on after that to legalize incest and polygamy and... Who told you that, sir? Tam. It's in the internet. Boys. in the internet, and you just put it out there to convince voters to vote for Proposition 8? Tam, yeah. 8, Act 2.
In the end, Sam and I both found that our research headed in the same direction because we both found it equally as interesting that public opinion didn't necessarily shape the case, but it was important following the case. And our papers went in two completely different directions despite us finding the same research question, just because the sources we wound up with were completely different. And we found in the end also that political and social importance of the play's publicity and the use of big name actors was too impactful for us to ignore.